Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew. Episode 341, recorded for the week of February 3rd, 2026. AWS layoffs, scale down instead of scale out. You've done something wrong. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well.
It's really hard to read that show title. I'm just saying, I've never done it before and requires a little bit of stress to do it.
Yeah. I know Justin will veto show titles even if they are funny, just because they're hard to read. So we probably should have practiced that, because that's why we do the read out before usually. I forgot that there's a purpose behind it.
We were just like, nah, this title is not appropriate, but we like it, so we're going for it.
Right, that's it. But they're going to leave us in charge. They have to deal with all the, side effects.
That's what happens when you have the kids running the asylum.
Exactly. And just the two of us, too. Not even Jonathan here to supervise us, so. Cool.
I know we went from, almost a month of almost all four of us, I feel like. Well, last week was I came late, Jonathan left early, so... I'll still count that as a victory. All of us showed up.
Oh, I think it counts for sure.
So we're down to two. It was a real big quick dip.
Yeah. Well, hopefully next week we'll pick it back up with all of us.
Yeah.
All right. Let me kick it off with SpaceX acquiring XAI. They plan to launch a massive satellite constellation to power it. So SpaceX has a plan to deploy up to 1 million satellites as orbital data centers, representing a significant bet that space-based compute infrastructure can be cost competitive with traditional ground-based data centers for AI workloads. The merger combines SpaceX launch capabilities and satellite manufacturing expertise with xAI's Grok Chatbot and X social platform, formerly known as Twitter. The strategy assumes AI demand will continue growing and that compute capacity, rather than other factors, are the primary bottleneck for AI adoption. Orbital data center concept raises questions about latency and power requirements, thermal power management, and maintenance compared to terrestrial facilities. Traditional cloud providers have invested heavily in ground-based infrastructure optimized for these factors. This consolidation of Musk's companies creates a potential conflict between SpaceX's established government and commercial contracts and xAI's more controversial products. Integration of a proven aerospace company of a newer AI venture introduced the execution risk of SpaceX core business. This plan depends on several unproven assumptions, including sustained AI market growth, viable economics for space-based computing, and the ability to manufacture and launch satellites at an unprecedented scale. Cloud providers and enterprises will need to evaluate whether their orbital compute offers advantages over the existing multi-regional terrestrial deployments. Wow.
I love that the word terrestrial is in there.
Yeah. Must be nice if you can just sort of move your companies around. I feel like this is a shell game con, taxes are over here. No, they're over here. No, not under this cup.
There's definitely something I don't understand how it was called. He said he would buy it for X price, buy Twitter for X price. He bought it and he was called out on it after he kind of tried to back out of it. Then he moves it to X. Then he opens up a new company. I think I never really understood what XAI was and related to X. And then he sells it to another company. I feel like he's printing money somewhere along the way. He's I'm taking out $1 million here for me during this merger as my fee, and this couple million here is part of my fee. I just don't understand that. I'm not smart enough to understand the shell game that's going on here.
I don't know if it's you're not smart enough. I mean, this is fishy, right? Because I think XAI actually came out of X, formerly known as Twitter. I think they sort of spun off Grok into that new company.
So is Grok its own business inside of?
Yeah. Then later XAI basically bought Twitter, which I thought was weird at that time, because it just feels like you're moving losses around or doing something funky at that point. And now everything's getting sold to SpaceX, which
is rumored to go public this year.
So it does really feel like something fishy's going on, right? Like, and then and they're all private companies, so I don't know the legalities of these things. Like, I guess, there's it, as long as I guess it's, cleared by the people that are owning the stock of these companies, I guess it's okay. But I don't know. The fact that SpaceX owns Twitter makes me like, what? Like, this doesn't make sense.
So XAI owned Grok, X, formerly known as Twitter, Aurora, which is the text to image model, the Grokopedia, which I've never heard of till the first time I'm saying that, which is the AI generated online encyclopedia, Grok Code Fast 1, and Prompt IDE. Grokopedia, the idea of AI generating a Wikipedia terrifies me a little bit. I'm just saying. Like, way to rewrite history. AI is going to like hallucinate its own history about itself and how it's formed.
I mean, we have anyone who wants to edit Wikipedia, so I don't know. You always have to trust those things with, whatever trust level you're comfortable with.
What are you, like my high school teacher or like my college professors that like you can't use Wikipedia as a source? So everyone just went down to the bottom, found the source that they used, so use that one.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. Hey, I don't think that's cheating at all. That's exactly what I would have done. I would have done that anyway, because quoting Wikipedia sounds like silly, but having someone basically curate all the sources into one spot it's easy for me to easily gather. Oh yeah,
that's 100% what I did. So in other phishing news, Notepad++ was hijacked by a state-sponsored hacker. Chinese state-sponsored hacker compromised Notepad++ update infrastructure from June to December of 2025 by exploiting vulnerabilities at the shared hosting provider level, not Notepad++ itself. And I've read the articles. They definitely make sure to call that out. The attacker maintained access to internal services and credentials after losing access to the servers in September, allowing them to selectively redirect update traffic to malicious servers until December. The attack exploited insufficient update verification controls in older versions of Notepad++, with attackers significantly targeting update manifest endpoints to serve compromised installers to selected users. This affected version 8.8.9 added certificate and signature verification for the download installers, while the upcoming version 8.9.2 will enforce XML DSIG signature verification on the update server process. The hosting provider has confirmed the compromise and was limited to one shared hosting server, which obviously they were using. No evidence was found on targeting other customers through the investigation of over 400 gigabytes of logs. Rapid7 and Concurrent later published detailed technical analytics of the actual IOCs. This incident really does demonstrate supply chain attacks in open source software that's used by millions of people. I mean, I've been using Notepad++ for years. Their response was to roll back and then redeploy. And essentially, any system that actually has Notepad++ on it, in my opinion, burn to the ground and start over. I mean, this is a massive attack of, this to me is almost worse than like the SolarWinds attack, where this is, Notepad++ people use on millions of Windows servers because standard Notepad can't handle log files and everything else like that. So like, I know I've seen tens, if not hundreds of companies that keep Notepad++ on their Jump or other servers, even the portable binary. That you can just go run the log. So getting into at this level and that maintenance of control for 7 months, June through December, is crazy. So I mean, it's a pretty big attack.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's the length of time doesn't really confuse me, because I think this type of attack is pretty tricky to detect, because I think they were redirecting upload traffic, right? So requests coming in
only for a select number too.
Mm-hmm.
And they were targeting like those IPs is what I read.
Yeah. So it is pretty difficult. But you're right. This Notepad++ is on every Windows server running, and in the environment that I can remember, just because of, like you said, like you use it for all kinds of tools, verifying, configurations, looking at log files and applications, all those things. So it is pretty crazy to me. I wish that they had more publishing of the compromise indicators, because I don't know how anyone
They
can detect
released
this in their, or do they?
so I'm actually reading one of the later articles about the IOC right now.
Uh-huh.
The initial post I read when it first came out on Notepad++ website, like last night-ish, didn't link to it, but now in the main article they linked to a couple of the other for Rapid7, the other one, that really show how they did it at the technical level. So you would see like redirects to IP addresses versus the primary one, is what I'm quickly skimming.
I was just wondering if there's enough information to see if, people can detect this in their own environment, kind of any kind of indication of compromise. But definitely, no matter what, I would definitely go upgrade. And I think this, highlights it's yet another supply chain attack which is, I think a known weakness in a lot of people's software delivery. I know that, I've worked with 2 companies now where we've had to do a ton of hardening just because people, don't think about it as an attack vector. They think about, the code running in production on servers in that environment being which you have to protect. And the idea of protecting the code itself as it moves from one spot to another, people hadn't thought of. And so it can defeat any protection you had at your infrastructure level because it's already there. So it's kind of crazy. And I think a lot of companies are having to scramble a little bit. And I think that there's some, crude hammers right now for like code signing and verification there, but I don't think it's quite good enough. And it's definitely not everywhere yet. So you can't even rely on it.
Well, they haven't released the fix yet. They haven't released the core fix with the...
They just published a new version, right? That's probably the old.
No, they actually... So it's not with the actual... And maybe I'm wrong, but the way I read it is it's not actually with the version of Notepad or in the code itself. It's with the plugins that you have and how those plugins get updated. So Notepad++ is fine, but it's downloading all those extra plugins. That's a problem. So if you go to an older version, then re-download the plugins, you're good. And 8.9.2 will add the enforce XML-D signature verification. I feel like the SIG stands for signature, but I'm not going to make assumptions here. It's like ATM machine.
I assume you're right, but yeah. Because I think that's, just code signing. And so it's enforcing the code signing, I guess, at this plugin level, which makes sense.
Yeah. So, but again, this is all supply chain. And supply chain is one of the most terrifying parts, especially with how fast, all the different systems get, how many plugins you have. And if you're using any standard, software out there, like libraries package system, whether it's old school Ruby or, going into NPM or anything else, like all those packages, and all I can think of is the XKCD that relies on that left space, where, it takes down the whole internet with somebody takes down their package. But, one package pulls in 50, and keeping all those up to date and maintained and not breaking stuff is a lot of work. And keeping, the tools out there, whether it's, Sneak or Dependabot or anything else that want to sponsor us that are actually good dependency management tools. See, I slid that one in there. I was channeling my inner Justin there a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting those tools in place and getting those automatic updates and everything else like that in place is important in your infrastructure. Otherwise, it's hard.
Yeah. And, companies' willingness to introduce friction at that development layer is virtually non-existent, right? Because it's so painful if you can't, develop your features or get it through the environment. So it's having very long review times and stuff that doesn't promote, very quick CI/CD is definitely something that's a little tricky these days. So not an easy job, but very important.
Yep.
All right, moving on to even more miserable news. Internal messages revealed jobs, and are affected in Amazon layoffs, Business Insider. Probably got to redo that title. That seems wrong. Amazon is cutting 16,000 corporate roles in its second major layoff round within 4 months, according to multiple AWS service teams. The teams include Bedrock AI, Redshift Data Warehouse, and ProServe Consulting divisions. Cuts represent a significant restructuring of Amazon's corporate workforce of approximately 350,000 employees. AWS engineering teams appear heavily impacted based on internal Slack messages, with software engineers from cloud services posting job searches. This raises questions about AWS product development velocity and customer support capacity during periods of intense AI competition with Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. Affected U.S. employees receive 90 days for internal job searches, with severance and benefits for those unable to find new positions. Timing follows Amazon's return to office mandate and broader tech industry cost-cutting trends. The layoffs touch customer-facing teams like Prime subscription services and last-mile delivery alongside cloud infrastructure groups. This dual impact on retail and AWS operations suggests company-wide efficiency initiatives rather than targeted underperformance at specific business units. Yikes. So, huge layoff. Lame.
Yeah, I saw a ton of things on LinkedIn. I think it was like last Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that, because I was traveling last week. So the days kind of blur together when you're at a sales kickoff event.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw a ton of people posting, hey, this person just got affected, this person got affected, and it sucks. And it's everything from, I know people on the, CS delivery side to, account reps to Bedrock engineers. I saw, like, it really did affect the broad spectrum of the org. And I think some of this also is uncertainty in the economy over hiring over the last years. And, I think people hoped the return to work was going to scare more people away. I say that, but that's kind of what I feel like.
I mean, it might be. It's hard to see some of these return to work initiatives as anything but that sort of layoff in sheep's clothing, just 'cause it seems so nonsensical.
But you're losing the wrong people is the problem.
Oh, 100%. Like, it's such a bad strategy if it's true.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea in the slightest.
I want to join the super secret, like, HR Association of Americas, where they talk about some of these things and be like, what are you thinking? Why do you think that this is a good idea for HR people?
I wonder if it's, I think you're giving them too much credit. I think they just see that as, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how people see it.
It's probably what our 5 listeners think of us. They think we're so polished and put together, and not knowing
they
that
don't
we
see
really
how the
wing
sausage
it.
is made, and us barely this.
Like, who's joining this week? Yeah, like, what's this word? Like, you don't see that behind the scenes stuff. And thank God that we have an editor that makes us sound good, and we know what we're doing every week. I don't know. I never listen to us. I can't stand listening to my own voice. Wait, that's not what I sound like.
Yeah. Nah, I prefer the noise that reverberates around my skull, for sure.
Yeah. AI is how ML makes money. Project Genie AI world model now available for ultra users in the US. Google's DeepMind Project Genie, an experimental web app now available to Google AI Ultra subscribers in the US, 18 plus, powered by Genie 3 model that generates interactive 3D in real-time based from text prompts and images. Unlike 3D static snapshots, Genie 3 simulates physics and interaction dynamically as users navigate and explore the world on the fly. So I feel like, if I'm understanding this correctly, they've now made a world that we can live in that's dynamically generated as we walk through it, which is crazy in my head. The platform offers 3 core capabilities: world sketching, using obviously Nano Banana Pro, which I still love whoever named that; world exploration, the real-time path generation based on user interactions with adjustable camera controls; and world remixing. I feel like we need a remixing DJ sound right there.
Yeah. Users
can define characters' perspectives, third and first world, and movement types. Current limitations include 60-second generation caps, occasional physics inconsistency. It's like the world's crashing down upon you. Character control issues with latency, don't mind that lagging, and world generations that might not always match the prompt. The release represents Google's approach to building general AI systems that can navigate diverse real-world scenarios, moving beyond the domain-specific agents like AlphaGo. I mean, this is crazy. They're like, and could be a whole new world in like the gaming world in my head.
Yeah.
And obviously it's in their beta. It's in their deep mind. Like to me, this is all like the very edge of everything that they're playing with. But like, it's pretty damn cool that what they're able to do. Like that is impressive. I've watched like a piece of it as I was prepping. See, sometimes we prep, and it's freaking crazy. It's scary at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it is going to really change. Just, I think video games, is definitely the primary thing that'll change, right? Because you just remove all limits in these open world scenarios, and it won't be repeating. It'll just be generated indefinitely, which is kind of nuts. But there's also like, when I think about manufacturing and different industries there, I can see a lot of impact there for, kind of overlaying instructions and doing all that and dynamically generating those types of things based off of, real world data at that time, which I think is kind of amazing. And, like it feels like something we see in movies, right? When you have people like do those wireframe overlays of their existing environment and then make changes. And, in my head, that's what it looks like. And so it does really feel like we're starting to live in the future, which is kind of neat.
I wonder what the Matrix would be like if they remade the Matrix today with what we have today versus what was it, like 1999? I'm dating myself, and I'm worried about the actual release date to make me feel old.
So 1999 was not that long ago, and I stand by that.
Time keeps moving forward. Just
nope.
Nope.
Stop believing that long time ago.
It's kind of like your kids are still 4 in my head.
Yeah.
Your twins, like that's where my head is. Like,
well, they still act 4, so that's
different problems. I'm just saying. No, but even like simulations, like it talks about in the article and things like that. Like think about you're modeling like an airplane or something like that. You like, here's the general world. You tell AI to think of the craziest scenarios to run your simulated AI, plane through and see what it possibly could have done. Like
take this 2D sketch and let me walk through this plane that I drew. Right? Like it's crazy to me. Yeah.
And now test the physics on it.
Yeah.
And keep going. Like it can do like it's crazy where we are and what we're capable. I'm also worried about, how many whales I kill every time I run my Claude code, but we'll talk about that at a different time.
Yeah. I've not. Yeah. Well, that'll diverge. I'm gonna self-edit myself, I guess. Yeah. All right. OpenAI is retiring GPT 4.0, 4.1, 4.1.mini, and OpenAI O4 Mini in ChatGPT. On February 13th, 2026, OpenAI is retiring those models, although the API access will remain unchanged. They say that only 0.1% of users are still selecting GPT 4.0 or GPT 4.0 daily, with the most usage shifted to GPT 5.2. GPT 4.0 was previously deprecated and then later restored after the user feedback about creative ideation needs and the preference for its conversational warmth was found lacking in GPT-5. The feedback directly referenced 5.1 and 5.2. And so now in those models, there's customizable personality controls for warmth, enthusiasm, and conversational styles like friendly. OpenAI is addressing user complaints about unnecessary refusals and overly cautious responses in newer models. The company's developed an adult-focused version of ChatGPT for users over 18 with expanded freedom with appropriate safeguards, supported by age prediction rollouts in most markets. The model retirement strategy allows OpenAI to concentrate resources on improving models with active user bases rather than maintaining the legacy version. This follows a pattern of deprecating older models as newer versions incorporate user-requested features and achieve broader adoption.
Deprecation of things is one of the hardest things. And, we joked a lot last year when, AWS finally deprecated things and, a few came back from the dead. But deprecating things is hard. People have it built in, hard coded, et cetera, into their apps, into their workflows, and they're used to specific types of responses back. You can go between the models, you get slightly different responses. I understand that every time you ask the question, you get a different response, but consistently you'll get different types of responses back from different models. So it's interesting that it's good to me that they're trying to kill off and kind of keep the world clean. They don't need to keep computer set aside and everything else for these old models, but I understand why it's so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a real interesting change to our software, right? Because it's not only are you looking at things like version compatibility and do the API contracts remain unchanged, but if you've built in AI responses into your own application, all of a sudden it can turn cold and unfriendly, and it's nothing to do with anything you've done. It's just the model that's changing underneath it, right? So it can really change the user behavior. And, maybe you would want to instruct the model to, compensate for that or have a very specific tone where you didn't have to do that previously, or vice versa, right? Like, who made my scientific app sound like a bubbly, teenager? So it is sort of an interesting sort of trend, and I think we'll see more of that. And I wonder, if these tools will standardize across, products, above OpenAI, just because there's kind of a lot riding on that, right? Like the accuracy, you're kind of staking your business a little bit on these models, and the results are going to feed back. So it is kind of nerve-wracking if you're one of those companies.
And it's so different than we just talked about software dependencies. It's going to be your AI model dependency and keeping it up to date with the latest. It's just another kind of, software composition analysis, keeping yourself up to date to kind of have it. Same concept, different form.
Yep.
On to new forms of the way to deal with things. Codex introduces a Mac app. OpenAI launches Codex, a desktop app for Mac OS X, a command center interface for managing multiple AI coding agents simultaneously across long-range development tasks. The app includes native support for parallel agent workflows using Git work trees, allowing multiple agents to work in isolated copies of the same repo without conflicts while maintaining separate threads context per project. Codex now expands beyond code generations through skill systems that bundle in instructions, resources, and scripts for tasks like Figma design user, linear project management, and cloud deployments to Cloudflare and other tools. The app introduces automations, a scheduled background tasks like daily issue triage, CI failure analysis, release briefs, with resulting landing in review queues for developer oversight. All agent runs are configurable system-level sandbox by default, restricting edit files in the working directory and requiring elevated permissions for elevated network access like network access. For a limited time, OpenAI is introducing Codex access with ChatGPT free Go tiers and doubling rate limits across all paid plans. Usage has since doubled for 5.2 Codex since the launch in mid-December, with over 1 million developers now using its service. Windows support planned for the future.
They got a lot of catching up to do. Cloud code is all I hear about. I don't know specific numbers on their market penetration, but it's just everywhere. I know I do hear about Gemini Code and the sort of code to command. Yeah.
I've been hearing more
mostly because I live in a Google ecosystem. So
yeah, I was gonna say, so I've heard a lot in the last week about Codex. Last 2-3 weeks. It's been on my list of things to play with, but
Codex, the model, and its use of through other tools, I've definitely heard of. But
yeah, and then it was going around my day job today about the Codex app and leveraging it and everything else.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, compare it with the other tools. And it's, it's kind of tricky because, I think now with these agentic flows and code development, there's so much investment in your workflows and your personal environments. And so having specific tools set up a certain way, having skills and agents configured the way you like them, it makes moving between these things a little complex. And, then you got to sort of adapt to a different tool settings. And I know as I've moved from Cursor to to VS Code to Claude Code. Like it's each time I sort of make those transitions, it's sort of, I don't know. I'm less excited about trying the new one. I think it is something that OpenAI had to do to keep up with the other providers.
Yeah, I mean, especially this specific, app and everything. I mean, I definitely started playing more with the Claude app locally, just for like revise my email, things along those lines, make me sound not like a monkey on acid, things along those lines. And even co-work stuff I've kind of played around with a little bit more, and it does make my life a little bit easier. I haven't done it, but like I still live in VS Code, and it's going to take a long time for me to get out of it. It's kind of like when Atom died. I don't remember that Mac editor back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And like that was my go-to notes for everything. Like I'd be in a meeting and be like, let me pull up Atom, type my notes in there real fast. And, I just type my notes in Markdown because I'm a crazy person. And then kind of moved over to VS Code. So I feel like it's almost like VS Code for my cold dead hands. Like it has to have a plugin to VS Code. Otherwise it's like hard for me to start to use.
Yeah. Which I do believe Codex has as a VS Code module, just not this app.
Yeah.
So it's sort of using it through VS Code. I think a lot of the similarities between the app and what you can do in VS Code are probably similar. And so I know that that's something I've sort of found with Claude Code. Like I was sort of underwhelmed, like when it first came out, because I'm like, oh, cool, terminal. I can do terminal things. And I'm like, and it wasn't as exciting to me as using VS Code. But now I see, like, I haven't really adopted these workflows, but I see a lot of others adopting more sort of unsupervised sort of code execution. I'm still too much of a nanny. I want to see what it's doing and make sure that I can be there for correction. So I don't like it running and doing things without me sitting there watching it. Like I see what people are doing now, which is they're not directly interacting and supervising it, which is why something like, this Code desktop app or Claude Code or those, like you're more executing, different functions behind the scenes and then having it come back when it's finished.
I definitely have it do more. I still use actually the command line though within VS Code. I don't know why.
Oh, so do I. No, a ton.
I can't handle the UI, and like a couple times it's turned on. And it's like, hey, do you want to do like? There's an option to go do it. I'm like, yes, please stop. Like, no, stop talking to me in this like weird UI thing. Like, maybe it's just I need like a CLI, so I feel like I'm in control of what's happening, and the Linux assembly comes out. But like, no, this is garbage. Please try again later.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting now. Now that I got thinking while you were talking, like I could do a Claude Code terminal session within VS Code.
In the bottom part, yeah.
And then it could just be turtles all the way down.
So I normally have one or two going, when I'm actually like, I have one going, which is like my ongoing project. Like I have a side project at work I'm working on. And then when I actually have time, I've started giving myself some engineering work to kind of like help expedite projects on my team for my day job. And I'll actually open up another shell, like go knock out a Jira task in like 30 minutes. And then and that's kind of why I keep them separated. Again, I'm a crazy person. I get it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to AWS. AWS announces deployment agent SOPs in AWS MCP server. So this will enable developers to deploy web applications to production using natural language prompts through MCP-compatible tools like Claude, Cursor, Kiro, Codex app. The system automatically generates CDK infrastructure, deploys CloudFormation stacks, and sets up CI/CD pipelines with AWS security best practices included. What could go wrong? This feature addresses the gap between AI-assisted prototyping and production developments by allowing developers to move from vibe-coded application direct to production. Let's not review that at all. Sometimes even in a single prompt. Oh, good. Agent SOPs follow multi-step procedures to analyze project structure, create preview environments on S3 and CloudFront, and configure code pipeline for automated deployments from source repositories. Support includes popular web frameworks like React, Vue.js, Angular, and Next, with automatic documentation generation that enables AI agents to handle future deployments and troubleshooting across sessions. The deployment process creates persistent documentation in the repository for continuity. Currently, this preview is only available in US East and is at no additional cost. Customers do pay for the standard rates for AWS resources that are created and the applicable data transfer costs. This represents AWS integration of AI agents into the deployment workflow, competing with other infrastructure's code deployment automation tools. Hooray! I like and hate this all at the same time. I feel like, a quick way to traverse through the software development lifecycle is a good thing. Having AI agents develop, stuff that's, boilerplate YAML configurations for Kubernetes, like fantastic.
Automatically promote code to production.
Yeah. I think that, there's other business processes that would sort of prevent that. So it would be kind of cool to, being able to create end-to-end infrastructure and code through like all the way to an integration environment, maybe. And then having, sort of more eyes review that process. But not everyone really has that capability too, in terms of like having multiple teams evaluate production code, having security teams analyze it for potential risks. And so they're just building a lot of these things into agents. So I think that that's better than nothing.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I get what they're going for. It's the infrastructure AWS DevOps engineer in me is like, you're going to have something just develop code. Good luck with that, sir.
And push it directly to production.
And push it directly prod. But don't worry, that SRE agent that you developed will figure out how to fix that. And like, it might with enough iterations, and this is where I'm still like, I sound old school at this point, I feel like, but you still need human in the loop somewhere along the way to kind of review and make sure that, I told it to set me up a CloudFront with back. I said, hey, I need a blob storage account with CloudFront, and it set me up CloudFront with a server that, connected to EFS. And I was like, whoa, time out. Trying to do static content. Let's make this simpler. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And I'm like, I love when AI tells me I'm right. Makes me feel good about myself.
Oh, I hate that. Makes me feel like when I am right, it diminishes its value.
I love at one point when it said, unfortunately, you are correct. And I was like, F you, Claude, go away. I was so mad.
Yeah. No, I mean, this, I think it's, you got to review these things and make sure that you've got some sort of check and balances. I can see this developing infrastructure that's really expensive and, maybe not as performant. I think that people underestimate the amount of context a human can sort of use at a single time when developing something. And so there's a lot of intangibles that aren't defined in that prompt that just a native human would do. And of course that changes as, people gain more experience. Someone that's fresh out of college may not know that this one technology is really expensive. And that's why you generally have more senior people on the team review that code and those processes. I think this should be no different because I don't think AI is quite good enough to where I would trust it. Like create my CloudFormation stack and just go. No. Like I said, I don't even trust it to do like off background coding at this point, just because I feel like I'm very much hurting it like a cat more than in order to make it develop good code than I would trust to have it just do that with just my prompts in the background. And I spend a lot of time in configuring those workflows, but it's not quite good enough there.
AWS STS now supports validation of select identity provider specific claims from Google, GitHub, Circle CI, and OIC. Because obviously we need Oracle somewhere in here. AWS STS now validates provider specific claims from the prior people when federating into AWS via OIDC. This allows customers to reference custom claims as conditional keys in IAM roles, trust policies, and resource control policies, enabling more granular access for federated identities beyond the standard OIDC claim. This feature addresses a common security gap where organizations previously could have only validated standard OIDC claims like subject and audience, but could not enforce conditional based on provider specific like GitHub repository names or Google Workspace domains. This enhancement helps establish data perimeters by allowing customers to restrict access based on specific context from the identity provider. It's now available everywhere in STS.
This is a fantastic feature that I was convinced was brand new announced until Matt scolded me and said, I've been doing this for months. Because I did not know that you could do this with STS, use a different technology to sort of create an authentication token to directly access AWS resources. But apparently that's been around for a while.
So you can always do OIDC claims. Again, I've done it a bunch between GitHub, specifically for GitHub App Actions and AWS. Because otherwise, prior to that, you had to use hard-coded credentials and access keys, secret key, and bad news bears and turtles all the way down. So when they released this, I think it was around 2022 from our pre-show random rant that we realized we really should record the pre-show and have actually just stubbed into the actual show. But it's what did we decide it was? It's the custom
claims, yeah.
The custom claims for things like GitHub repository names and things like that.
Because I think before, OIDC, standard claims are really, really tailored toward human attributes, right? And so you've got the subject and the issue identifier and the audience and expiration time. Those are useful, when you think about GitHub Actions or other automation workflows. But then everything else is name, family name, email address, blood type, or other things that aren't really useful for doing sort of automated workflows. And so this allows you to this is where you'd be able to put a claim that's specific to your repo or specific to your branch, or maybe even depending on your action workflow name, you could have a specific sort of authorization for just that role, which I think is cool. So I use this a lot because we use hosted runners, right? But those are running on cloud provider. So they already have a certain amount of cloud authorization, right? It just through the sort of just running, you get your built-in EC2 roles, or, IAM, you have instant profiles, forgetting the name.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Azure has a similar thing. And so I don't necessarily want to give those runners, which are a shared resource in the company, access to every sensitive workload in my company. And so I use these claims to validate sort of this token exchange of validating custom claims. So runners that are executing out of this repo can use these privileges. So rather than using the shared infrastructure, it allows a way to do privilege escalation and a validation of infrastructure. And it's pretty cool. I'm really happy with this workflow. It's been a big concern of mine that, a lot of these deployment tools and stuff that we use on our pipelines are shared across the entire company. And so it's a big separation problem. This fixes that.
I actually realized why I thought that this was already there prior to the show too, was because I recently did GitHub to SSO, and it was ODIC into Azure DevOps or something like that. It was GitHub into somewhere, some connection we had, and you can specify the repo that it's running as. And that's what it is here, is you can have an ODIC connector for a repo and say, this repo is only able to be the one that identifies.
Yeah.
Oh, it was into our Azure.
Yeah. Audience claim.
Yeah.
So because it's the provider on that end who's doing the authentication, that they have to be able to, when that token exchange happens, they have to be able to sort of understand those claims and evaluate whether that's an authorized request or not.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, Amazon and the security token service now can do that across all these tools, which is super cool. Amazon CloudFront announces mutual TLS support for origins. Mutual TLS authentication allows customers to verify that requests to their backend servers come only from authorized CloudFront distributions using certificate-based authentication. This eliminates the operational overhead of managing custom solutions like shared secret headers or IP allow lists that previously required constant rotation and maintenance. This feature works with AWS Private Security Authority or third-party private CAs imported through AWS Certificate Manager, providing cryptographic verification CloudFront's identity to any origin that supports MTLS, including application load balancers, API gateway, and on-premise servers. There's no additional charge for using Origin MTLS beyond the standard CloudFront pricing. This is a common security gap you typically see in organizations where you want to restrict access to your website, if you will, and make sure that it goes through your caching layer, your WAF protection layer. And I have definitely put this in place where restricting this down to IP addresses, and which is awful, or headers, which is just non-secure, but you put it in there just in the hopes that, someone can't just figure out the custom headers that you're using. So this is, I think, a great thing. I hope it's easy to enable, because mutual TLS and the certificate management can bite you and can be difficult to resolve when certificates expire and you don't know what needs to be updated. But I do like to see this change.
Yeah, I mean, while I hate supporting MTLS, it is a really good layer of security and stuff.
Yeah.
And having that extra layer now, they did ALBs, last year, a couple months ago, whenever it was, lose track of time, and to get to the point now where they're at of supporting this, it's amazing, how security is not just, a single point. It's really in the entire stack, and you have to really be careful with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that this type of thing of being able to verify not only the outbound request, but the incoming request is from who you think it is a good thing. We're seeing, this is something you can set up, in your code pipelines and that to protect supply chain attacks and that kind of thing. And so I do like to see this more and more and more. And then I think putting it at the CloudFront layer and, tying it to application load balancers is kind of just an easy button, which I do like.
On a great quality of life improvement that I very much appreciate, the AWS console now displays account names in the navigation bar, replacing the prior reliance on account numbers for identification, because who doesn't like memorizing all their account numbers? This addresses a common pain point for organizations managing multiple accounts, like AWS promotes when their US Control Tower product, where you manage multiple dev, prod, or even business units. Crazy concept. This feature is does not cost anything to display what is something useful. Once enabled, all authorized users in an account can see the account name displayed in the console for your navigation bar. The update provides immediate values for the teams working across multiple accounts who priorly had to memorize 12 digits. I was going to say 10 when I was going to say it earlier, but good thing I didn't. The visual distinction helps reduce errors when switching between environments and other business units. I don't understand why this was so hard to do. I am sure there was a technical reason, but for the love of God, I think I put this request in like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I remember the first Rube Goldberg setup I set up with a browser extension so that I could individually color tabs and separate the sessions for like the session cookies per account, because I was so sick of trying to remember which account I was in across the 200 accounts we had, and whether or not it was dev or prod, or then having to go and look up, in an outside source, what account number is what name. Like,
yeah, no, like I said, not the sexiest feature, but for the love of God, the most useful feature of this podcast.
It is definitely my favorite announcement in this entire list for today. Like, it is my favorite one.
I almost want to save this as my favorite announcement of the year is where I'm at right now. Like, it's the stupidest thing, but it's so nice.
No, I agree. Like, and they've been making AWS has been making some real improvements with, and I think you're right. I think there was technical limitations because they didn't really build a multi-account strategy, right? These accounts.
I assume it was like a separate database and querying it would have DDoSed it,
Well, and I think session state was a big deal. I don't think they really had the ability to sort of, you had to log all the way out of an account and all the way back in if you wanted to switch accounts up until fairly recently.
Yeah, as I say,
now
about
can switch
6 months ago, the multi-account session. So I feel like this is building on it. And I hate to say this, but I also feel like this is probably where, if they are leveraging QRO internally, like a lot of these low priority requests that just aren't going to make the money, I feel like they're getting to recently. And maybe that's like me reading way too far into the tea leaves, but like there's been a lot of just small quality of life improvements like this that maybe someone's just sitting there on the backlog, and maybe we'll stop seeing them now that they laid off 16,000 people.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think enough people complaining about this, maybe, and I agree. I think it's that multi-account thing that allows this. But yeah, I hesitate to think that they're just getting to these features. I think it's much more demanded and required by businesses these days to be able to use your product.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Announcing increased 1 megabyte payload size for Amazon Event Bridge. This is up from the previous 256 KB limit, eliminating the need for developers to split large events, compress data, or store payloads externally in S3. Simplifies architectures for applications handling LLM prompts, telemetry data, and complex JSON structures from machine learning models. The increased payload size reduces architectural complexity and operational overhead by allowing comprehensive contextual data to be included in a single event, rather than require chunking logic or coordination with external systems. This is particularly relevant for AI and ML workloads where the model outputs and prompts can exceed the previous size constraints. Feature is now available in most AWS commercial regions where EventBridge operates, with notable exceptions in the Asia-Pacific regions like New Zealand, Thailand, Malaysia, and Taipei. And there's no additional cost mentioned for the larger payload support other than the standard EventBridge pricing. This charge addresses common pain point where developers had to implement workarounds. I think I've said that like 6 times. I'm not reading the rest of this.
This is what happens when we do the podcast. It's like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's the last bullet point. I clearly only read the first 3. Didn't edit the last one. Yeah, I think that this is a good thing. I was laughing at this because I remember event size and kinesis being a big to do in an early like a project forever ago, and trying to think through all the limits and what we were going to have to do with that. And I was a big advocate for storing pointers in external systems, but then now I was thinking through the AI workloads and how much of a pain in the ass and slow it would be to have your prompts referencing an external source every time for just the return value. So I'm glad to see this.
Yeah, I mean, again, nice quality of life. I've done so many, like you've said, pointers, whether it's an S3 event, or hey, write it to here and then, wait for it and then put it in there. So hopefully it just helps kind of drive out that toil. I hope they don't keep increasing this because I feel like it's going to break more stuff down the line and let people do bad architectural things. But, they keep doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on what you put in that payload, right? Because you can definitely introduce poison pills really easily with larger payloads. And you can, like if you don't manage that well, you can put yourself in danger of major data loss, right? Depending on like if your entire pipeline goes down, all those requests and all the content within there, it could be a problem. So it's, you want to make sure that you have a disaster recovery strategy for case of failure for sure. Because I don't think people really consider these event pipelines as these massive data conduits that they are. And so they don't have the same sort of backups in place like you would with a database or something else, right? Like, so it's definitely true. But again, like I do see for AI stuff, like you can't really introduce any latency. It's already slow. I don't want to wait for that prompt to come back. I'm lazy. Screw that.
Well, on ways to block your AI traffic, AWS Network Firewall Manager now supports Gen AI traffic visibility and enforcement with web category-based filtering. The Network Firewall Manager has URL category-based filtering that lets you control access to Gen AI applications, social media, streaming services, and other web categories using predefined categories instead of maintaining manual domain lists. This reduces operational overhead, obviously, of your security team who has nothing better to do, who maintain and enforce consistent policies across AWS environments while gaining visibility into emerging technologies that they have no idea of. Sorry, Ryan. The Gen AI visibility component addresses a growing compliance need as organizations struggle to track and govern access to all the AI possibilities out there, such as GPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. The security team can now restrict Gen AI to only approved control tools and block access entirely if they have no risk tolerance for anything, or if it's a government requirement. In combination with TLS inspection, it enables full URL path-based inspection beyond just granular domain.
I swear this is the second time we're talking about this article too. I feel like there's a glitch in our system that we've moved to more automation. It's definitely introduced more ability for this. Like I can't.
Damn AI.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do yet another AI agent to keep us on track for topics.
I was reading it and I was like, did we talk about this last week?
I think we did. I still like it. Like I do think that these category-based filtering rules are, a life sentence, because like if you have to whitelist or deny list every single URL, like it's untenable. Like it's just crazy. And even in like a production ecosystem where the outbound, calls should be fairly limited other than responding back to, application requests, it's still really difficult to catch all the different, URLs you need just to download a software update package from Microsoft, right? There's the list that you have to do for just that is crazy. It's like 10 to 20 URLs and you're wildcarding within that. So having the categorization really helps because you can sort of define that for your teams and then you don't have to do every single URL. You'll still run into things where it categorizes it in the wrong bucket and then it blocks some traffic that it shouldn't be blocking, but damn the brakes.
Always blame your security team.
That's right. We suck. No doubt. All right, moving on to GCP. Conversational analytics in BigQuery is now in preview. This lets users query data using natural language instead of SQL. The AI agent uses Gemini models to generate queries, execute them, and create visualizations while maintaining security controls and audit logging within BigQuery's existing frameworks. System goes beyond basic chatbots by grounding responses in actual BigQuery schemas, metadata, and custom business logic, and includes verifying queries and user-defined functions. This ensures generated SQL aligns with production metrics and enterprise standards rather than making generic assumptions about data structure. Users can perform predictive analytics through natural language by querying AI functions like forecasts and detect anomalies without writing code, and the agent supports querying unstructured data such as images stored in BigQuery. Agents can be deployed across multiple surfaces, including Looker Studio Pro and BigQuery UI, and custom applications via API. The existing agentic ecosystems through ADK tools allow integration as well. Documentation and code labs are available at cloud.google.com for implementation guidance and specific pricing details, losing the ability to talk, were not discussed in the announcement. I do like this.
Anything that makes BigQuery easier to use. I don't have to write SQL. I don't have to do any of that. I'm happy.
For sure.
So in this week's new way to run the cloud poorly or, more expensively, introducing single tenant cloud HSM for more data control. Google Cloud has launched a single tenant cloud HSM, a dedicated hardware security module that gives organizations exclusive controls over cryptographic keys with FIPS 140-2 level 3 validation. Unlike multi-tenant solutions, customers get a sole physical HSM partition with hardware enforcement isolation, meaning their keys are cryptographically separated from all other customers and Google operators. Don't want to know how much this costs, and I'm going to tell you anyways. This costs $3,500 a month to just launch this bad boy. It wouldn't surprise me actually if there's like a 1 month minimum and 6 months, but from there. Obviously, this is targeting highly regulated industries like financial services, defense, healthcare, and government that need strict compliance and want to avoid managing their own physical hardware. Key security features include full ownership of root, quorum-based administration, requiring multiple authorized users for sensitive operations, and the ability to revoke Google's access at any time, which immediately makes all keys and hardware encryption data inaccessible. Is it in or unaccessible? I don't know the difference.
I think in.
I know, but what's unaccessible? Am I making it up because it's
I think that's not
approaching 11 o'clock? Yeah, it's approaching 11 o'clock and we're just making stuff up. Sorry. The single tenant integrates with existing APIs and works with CMEKs across all Google managed services. Setup takes approximately 15 minutes. So Ryan and I were talking the pre-show, and I'm going to fill you guys in on our pre-show banter that we were talking about. I was like, wow, I feel like AWS had this like 15 years ago. And with the quick research, I was like, yeah, they totally did. And it took them 2 weeks to pre-set it up. So I feel like we're on full circle where like AWS had this thing where it was single tenant, it required like a support ticket to open it up. Then they're like, no, we're not doing that. That's anti-cloud. We're building a multi-tenant environment. We're going to make everything API based. So they moved to, KMS the way we know it today, or Cloud HSM the way we know it today. And now Google's like, no, we're going back to old school, guys. Like, here's your dedicated. Like, I get the use cases ish of it.
Someone's demanding this. I think the reason why this is so late
it's
is
government.
Because, yeah, I know. And especially the way Google manages their infrastructure. They don't do a separate isolated cloud. They do assured workloads within their existing clouds. So I can see that being part of this too. And so I feel like they hesitated to do this just because it is a terrible support model. I think it's priced to indicate that. And I think
please don't do it.
Yeah, the people who are going to demand the single tenancy hardware level isolation should have to pay through the noise because it's a dumb compliance rule. And I'm not sure which regulatory framework would enforce this. I'm not familiar with all of them. I'm getting better.
I assume it's a DoD somewhere. One.
Yeah, maybe.
It's probably for a secret or top secret environment, really, is what they're doing it for. Would be my assumption.
That would be my guess, which would be somewhere in the FedRAMP DISA IL5 sort of framework somewhere, I believe. But no, this is, the isolation at the hardware layer just seems so unnecessary these days. And I don't think really providing any different security levels, right? Because it's still hosted in Google's data center and a rack next to all the other ones. And so you're really just protecting yourself from Google on-premise technicians. And sure, I guess, and in that case, you can.
But that's the same thing as any EBS level or drive level encryption in the cloud. It's like, okay, what am I really protecting against? Someone going to the data center, pulling out the hard drive that contains my hard drive, which, let's be honest, I assume is already spanned across multiple hard drives, and pulling the data. Like, okay, I guess you're then like at the physical and maybe a level up, some Azure technician or AWS technician that logs in and has some level of access, but doesn't have access to you. Like, is that what we're protecting against? Like, I'm just not sure anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's a checkbox. I check it, but what's the thing that we're actually solving for?
And that's why Google has announced this. Is someone had this checkbox, someone with enough, deep enough pockets had this checkbox and they wanted to check it. They're like, we will pay you any amount of money. And that any amount of money is $3,500 a month, which,
So my next question is, do I need 2 of these for HA?
Yeah, right.
Like, I know Google doesn't quite have the same primitives as the other clouds, but like, do I need 2? Do I need multiple reasons? So now do I need 4? Like, I just don't know. So,
well, I mean, it's definitely all of that would be in question, setting up your infrastructure, depending on, how you set it up. And, can you store like a basic key in the HSM and then sort of orchestrate everything through Cloud KMS? That way you get your disaster recovery. But
here's
I don't
your
know.
answer. Only US Central 1 and US East 4, so Iowa and North Virginia, support single tenant HSM.
Okay. So it is a federal required compliance.
Yeah.
Because those are the 2 assured workload locations in the US.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is a lot. I don't have the concept. It supports only 15,000 keys. But like, if you're issuing, like, in this case where you're running your own HSM, would you be issuing a key for every EBS drive that you do, or would you still do like one key for all EBS drives, and then like 15,000 either is like really small or like more than you would ever need?
Yeah,
and I'm not sure.
I mean, I've seen it. I don't think 15,000 keys is required, right? Like, you don't typically have or want to manage that level of granularity, because and I've seen like transparent level encryptions where each individual sort of endpoint node had its own sort of encryption key. And so you had these guard point nodes that had to sort of understand all the other nodes. And so it was trying to manage 15,000 keys. And let me tell you, it does not work. And so like, I think that, you want, just like anything else, you want to structure the key management of these things and isolation boundaries that make sense for your business and keep you safe while also limiting your blast radius. So it's, you have to just figure it out. There's no right number, but
No,
15,000 sounds like a lot to manage.
it both sounds like a lot and not a lot. That's why I'm like, it's like PKI where like there's a single one that kind of, you have your root cert, then you have
Mhm.
multiple secondary, or I don't remember what they're called at 11 o'clock at night, these certs, which, daisy chain up. So
And you could set this up like that where just your roots are on here, right? Like that's
that's
one of the
kind of
things
what
you
I
could
would
set
do,
up.
but
Yeah, it's
what I assume, that's where I'm like, maybe 15,000's way overkill, but it's just the limit
Mhm.
of what they can support.
well, I'm sure it's a hardware limit.
Yeah.
Where that number comes from. Yeah. All right. Moving on to Azure, the sole, single, and only Azure workload that we're only keeping in here because we know Justin will like it.
It's sad but true. And I get to make fun of Azure. Let's be
That's
honest.
true. All right. There's 2 reasons. It's always good to make fun of Azure. Azure launches DLS v7, DSv7, and ESv7 virtual machines in public preview, powered by Intel Xeon 6 processors codenamed Granite Rapids. These 7th generation Intel-based VMs represent the latest iteration of Azure's general purpose and memory optimized VM families, bringing the newer processor architecture to cloud workloads. The new VM series targets customers running compute-intensive and memory-intensive workloads that could benefit from the latest Intel processor improvements. General-purpose DLS v7 and DSv7 VMs suit balanced workloads like web servers and application hosting, while ESv7 VMs are optimized for memory-heavy applications such as databases and in-memory analytics. Intel Xeon 6 processors introduce architectural improvements over previous generations. Those specific performance metrics and pricing details were not provided in this announcement.
Let's preview. That makes sense.
Yeah. The preview status means these VMs are only available for testing and not really suitable for production workloads. And depending on your service level agreements and regional availability, organizations should check the Azure documentation for details.
The other reason I want to keep it in was I'm still struggling to get the V6 in regions, like some regions. And granted, these are less common regions, but, I have a different SKUs based on region availability because I just can't get it. And in some places, it's like, we can do it in 2 zones. And I'm like, cool, thank you. Way to make yourself more money. Because if I want to have a 1 zone outage, I feel like this is like that old AWS exam. You want to be able to maintain 6 nodes at any time, and you are spanned across 3 nodes. Your 3 zones. How many instances do you need? Well, that means I need, I don't remember the numbers I just said. 6, 2, 2, 4, 6, 6, 8, 9. Oh, I chose hard number. 3 in each zone. This is really good podcast material. Doing math on the fly.
The listeners rejoice.
I need 3 in each zone, but now when I have this, like, you think it just doesn't work. And like, thank you, Azure, for making yourself more money, because now I have to pay you more to keep my same availability.
Yeah. I mean, this just goes to show how spoiled you and I were on AWS, because I never had to deal with this on AWS, like never once. And I have to deal with it in Google all the time now. And so it's like, it really is like the way they manage capacity and they do their advertisements. And I wonder if it's changed as the hardware requirements have
I think
gone
it
up.
has.
Yeah. So even on AWS, maybe they run into this because there's so many SKUs available these days.
There's definitely some in the less prevalent regions where I've helped people where they're just not available.
Yeah.
So like this, the straight up SKU or instance type isn't around.
Yeah.
Wow, my default linguistic is now sometimes going to Azure, sometimes AWS, depending on the verbiage. It's really funny. I talked to my day job on whatever the next day, normally Wednesday morning after we do the podcast, and I can't keep any terminology straight. I just flip between the clouds. Everyone's like, "You did the podcast last time?" I'm like, "Yeah, sorry."
Yeah. That's funny. I think it was earlier this week in a meeting I stated publicly, it's like, don't worry, I understand AWS, because someone was just speaking in, EC2 and, and S3 and talking about generally cloud computing. And then they caught themselves, and I was like, don't worry, gotcha. It's pretty funny. It is difficult.
Whenever I interview or like I work with like our auditors or anything else, one of the first things I say to people, I'm like, what cloud do you want me to speak? I'm
Yeah.
really good at AWS and I'm pretty good at Azure compared to I'm supposed to be because I'm your expert that you're talking to right now. But if you want me, I can wing it enough on GCP, and normally between AWS and Azure. I've definitely talked to like an auditor or like, even like customers. They're like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, what is your cloud terminology of choice? Because that's what I can talk to you with.
Yeah. I found that specifically being on GCP for the day job, like most external companies I'm talking like that only understand AWS. And so I have to translate that direction. I haven't had anyone that only understood Azure or only understood GCP. So,
yeah.
Which, thank God, because if they were saying, oh, we only know Azure, and I had to translate to that, I was like, well, we're going to have to get someone else.
You're like, Matt, can I pay you a couple $100? Yeah. Just show up. I'll give you some
Let me
whiskey.
FaceTime a friend. Yeah, exactly.
Phone a friend, also known as FaceTime a friend. It would just be the three-way translation. You would tell me in AWS, I would have to translate it to Azure.
Yeah.
And go from there.
And that's what it would take to get the job done. That's hilarious. No wonder AI is like taking over.
Well, even we talked about it a few weeks ago, like the AI specific translation models that came out, like I think are really going to be revolutionary in like business, and getting into that point, we've completely digressed off Azure instance types, but that's a different problem. So,
well, that was our last story. So
yeah.
It is, this episode has been at our long point. Wow. It's not too long,
should we do the cloud journey?
I was thinking we should save it for next week.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Because
I think people are done hearing the two of us talk.
Yeah, so we'll save those for next week. So stay tuned if we didn't really tease that enough.
I was going to say, we'll talk next week about how AI assistants are taking over our lives.
Our lives, yeah, some more. Yeah. Talk about AI some more. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't talk about AI
This used to be a cloud hosting infrastructure Chatbot. Now it's just AI. Like everything else in the industry.
I was talking to somebody, I was like, they're like, oh, you do a podcast about the cloud. I'm like, yeah, it's like 60% AI and like 20% cloud at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do still heavily like lean towards those articles and those announcements, but there are not very many of them anymore. You don't really hear, other than our, we get our pittance of AWS console improvements, but then it's this bot, that bot, this thing.
Yeah. Anyway, we should sign off before we
we're getting rambly.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. And that is This Week in the Cloud. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
And that's all for This Week in Cloud. Head over to our website at thecloudpod.net, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, join our Slack community, send us your feedback, and ask any questions you might have. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.